welcome back for another deck showcase. I am Bryant Cook, and today we are covering Pauper Twiddle Storm, one of my favorite Pauper decks. Not more than Cycle Storm, but it's definitely up there. This deck's a lot of fun, and the idea behind this deck is that you're leveraging arcane spells, so Ideas Unbound and then Peer Through Depths. So these cards are arcane, which is an added benefit to these cards being instant or sorceries. And the reason why that's a benefit is down here we have Psychic Puppetry. So we're able to attach Psychic Puppetry to these arcane spells, so that way they have a built-in twiddle. So effectively this will read 3 mana, draw 3 cards. At the end of your turn, you discard 3 cards, untap target permanent. Well, the goal here is that we combine that effect with one of these enchantments here. They're 4 mana enchantments that make your lands tap for additional 2, and then we put them on top of these lands right here, the Crew. So you have a land that taps for 4, so that way every time you cast an arcane spell, you're generating 1 mana. That's how the deck functions. Eventually you win with a really big stream of thought. Alright, so now that you know how the deck works, let's talk a little bit about the cards. So I picked these up this year. In fact, I never even played Pauper until 2021. So both this and the Cycle Storm deck I made happen this year. And the Ideas Unbound were actually sort of pricey. They were roughly $50 each. Not easy to find either, because everyone wanted them for Doomsday. Doomsday picked up this year with the printing of Thassa's Oracle, and Ideas Unbound just became really, really difficult to find. So I ended up getting a set, but I had to piece them apart. It wasn't easy, but thankfully we got there. And Mark Teaton signs at pretty much every single Magic Grand Prix, Magic Fest, whatever you'd like to call them, in history. So once the world gets back to normal, I will get these signed by Sir Mark Teaton. Peer Through Depths. You'll notice I have 2 here signed by Anthony Waters and 2 that are not. Well, I had these 2 from playing Gift Storm and Modern, and it was sort of like a flex spot that we tried but didn't end up loving. So I never got a full set. So I only have 2 that are signed. That said, I could probably remove the signatures on these, and then next time I see Anthony Waters, who also goes to quite a few Magic Fests, I can get the full set signed. Psychic Puppetry, this is the Arcane Twiddle that I talked about, or spliced on the Arcane Twiddle that I talked about. Joel Thomas, I've contacted Joel 3 times and never gotten a response, so I don't know how difficult it is getting a hold of them, but I have not been successful yet. I would like these signed. I ended up getting the full playset pretty cheap. It was like $6 for all 4, so that is one of the nice things about Paupers. Sometimes your cards are just very cheap, including these 3 copies of Stream of Thought. This is how the deck wins. I got the full playset for under $4, so Japanese foils under $1, you love to see it. And the idea here is that this card puts arcane spells back into our deck while decking ourselves initially. So we'll mill ourselves, we'll put the good arcane spells back in, and eventually you want to get down to a point in your deck where it's all just a bunch of arcane spells, so that way you can start looping Stream of Thoughts with arcane spells, and eventually you start targeting your opponent and then you deck them. Your combo turn on average takes somewhere between like 7 and 12 minutes on average. So this deck takes a lot of clicking or a lot of good discipline and paper, but it is a lot of fun once you're winning. It's super rewarding. It's just very, very time consuming. So if you hate your friends, this is probably the deck for you. And then Snap. This is sort of a metagame call right now. In the past, I've run Dreamscript plus a bunch of other things. But Snap's really good right now because of the presence of Affinity, and slowing down Atog from murdering you is pretty good. This deck is really a turn 5 deck, turn 4 with a really good draw, and Snap sort of just helps you bridge that gap. So that's what we're looking Snap to do while untapping our Crew lands. We do play 7 Crews in this deck, and it's really good with those. And then we have our 7 green enchantments, Dawn's Reflection, and then Market Festival. As you can see, I got these signed by John Avon this year. What a lovely signature. These were actually sort of expensive for being what they are. They were $15 each. I only own the 3. I do not have a 4th, but that's okay because we'll never play 8 of these anyway. But yeah, these were just really hard to track down in general, so that's why the price was so high, where these were $1 because they're much more recent than 5th Dawn. And I have not been able to get a hold of Ryan Barger yet. Ryan Barger signs a few times per year. They did the reprint Tarmogoyfs, which I imagine is why they're contacted so frequently about card signing. But here I am wanting a 4-mana green common sign. So maybe we'll be able to make that happen. And then Explore. I did not get these in time for my John Avon signing, so maybe this year I'll send to John again and get my copies of Explore signed. It is a pretty good upgrade because it allows you to play an extra land on turn 2, which is pretty obvious, but it puts that Karoo into play on turn 2, which allows for more turn 4 wins, because then on your turn 3 you can play one of these 4-mana enchantments turn 4, untap with a land that taps for 4 and just go bananas. So Explore is really, really powerful here. And then we have our cantrips, Ponder and Brainstorm. So before I started playing this deck, Brainstorm wasn't really played. People ran a lot of Reach Through Mist instead, but Brainstorm allows you to put back 2 lands and shuffle them away. So really, it just allows you to keep going. It's an added consistency effect on the combo turn, despite... there's a lot of tricks you can actually do with Brainstorm in this deck. You can Brainstorm, put 2 lands on top, Stream of Thought yourself to get rid of those lands. You can then Peer Through Depths to put those 2 lands on the bottom. You can cycle, what is it called? Why can't I think of it right now? Ash Barrens. There we go. To shuffle as well. You could use Ponder if you need to, but Brainstorm's just super powerful and there's no reason to not be playing it. Ponder is just an added consistency. Help dig for those arcane spells. It does get 4 looks, which is quite helpful. And then Muddle the Mixture. Muddle is a card I've tried not playing recently, so that way I can play more lower to the ground cards, because ideally you don't want cards that aren't good on the combo turn. The problem is that Muddle finding ideas amount is so huge that I think you're almost required to play it. I have tried 0 copies. I haven't tried anything between 4 and 0, so maybe you could get away with 2 or 3. But just being 3-mana Demonic Tutor for Ideas Amount is fairly good. It also gets Psychic Puppetry, which is pretty helpful. So it's not the worst, but I do think that this is a card slot that could be upgraded at some point. I have not contacted Luca Zanoni to get these signed yet. I should do that. I just haven't done it yet. So maybe I'll try to get those done this year. Darren Bader, Deep Analysis. This is our win condition. It really is. So you could target your opponent to make them draw 2 cards after their deck, so that way they don't get an untapped step. This is really good against decks with reach in it, like Burn, Fling, Galvanic Blast, all that good stuff. But one of the nice things about it is sometimes you end up fizzling, but you have a Stream of Thought in your hand. So you can Stream of Thought yourself, looking to hit Deep Analysis to draw 2 to keep going. I've done that a few times in my life. It does work. You don't always hit off the Stream of Thought, but when you do, it feels so rewarding. And then down here we have our crew effects. We have Is It Boilerworks and Simic Guildgate, or not Simic Guildgate, Simic Growth Chamber. There we go. I remembered. And these are 8 crew effects. We actually do play some red spells in the sideboard, so the color fixing here is nice. But these are really the ones we want, the Growth Chambers, just because it helps us cast Explores and other enchantments in the middle of the combo turn. Finding these was actually pretty difficult. I got lucky that somebody reached out to me about them, that they were going to sell their set and gave me first dibs. I got them at a very reasonable price. I paid $90 for the playset. They could have asked for a lot more, but they were very kind to me, so I appreciate that. And these I just got off TCG Player. They were like $12 each. Wasn't too bad. And then down here, my Invasion basics. I have been playing since Invasion. It was my first Magic set, and way back when, I chose 1 art of each basic, and these are the ones that I selected. So these are my basic lands that I've used for the last 20 plus years. They are Magic the Gathering to me. These are my basics, and I love them. And then down here we have the Ash Barrens. I currently have 1 set out with Jonas Thoreau, but that set will be going in Cycle Storm. So I need to send out another set to get signed. Yeah, eventually everything will get signed. That's the game plan, at least. Playing your favorite combo deck in Paper just got so much easier with the Epic Storm Mini Token Pack. You can pick one up at theepicstorm.com/shop for $13. It includes 64 double-sided mini tokens. That's 128 tokens total. And they include 10 black, 10 blue, 10 red, 5 green, 5 white, 3 colorless, 20 storm counters. That means that you can count your way all the way up to 20 for Grape Shot, everyone's favorite storm win condition. A Galvanic Relay Exile Indicator, 4 treasure tokens for Strike It Rich, and then 10 monk tokens for our vintage friends. It also has Slime Time Live, Ave Progenitor Ooze tokens with the power and toughness already built in to make playing in Paper so much easier. No fumbling around with dice, we've got you covered. Make sure to go grab those if you're playing Modern. And then Squirrels versus Goblins, Chatterstorm versus Empty the Warrens, the Battle of the Ages. You definitely need 20 Squirrel tokens and 20 Goblin tokens. You're going to love this mini token pack, I promise. And once again, you can grab that at theepicstorm.com/shop. And then down here we have a Red Splash. Pyroblast, so we do Sideboard in a mountain because you can get it with Ash Barrens. Pyroblast is really good against the blue decks, obviously, but the big thing is that it stops Spellstutter Sprite, and that's the reason that Pyroblast is worth playing. So you can run Negate, but then Negate doesn't stop Spellstutter, which becomes pretty awkward. Or you can run Prohibit, but then Prohibit doesn't hit everything, so that's a little bit awkward at times. So I think Pyroblast is probably the perfect medium, especially when we have fixing from Izzet Boilerworks and Ash Barrens. It just makes a lot of sense. And you might not realize it, but these can make mana of any color as well. So if you need to in a pinch, you could tap those for red. You know, it's just great. And then down here we have Weather the Storm, primarily for the Burn matchup. Burn hasn't been super popular recently, but Weather's still worth playing. And a similar effect down here, we have Moment's Peace for decks like Bogles or something along those lines. And then Hydroblast is primarily for Affinity. I have these out being signed right now, actually. But these kill Atog dead and they buy you time, which is the reason worth playing them. And then Giga Drowse. I have not contacted the artist yet about getting these signed. I should do that. But these are for tapping down blue decks in one big effect, so that way they're not holding up several counter spells against you, but maybe one or two. And then you can use Pyroblast along with Muddle the Mixture to protect yourselves. Yeah. Down here we have our extra cards. Petals of Insight. Originally, this deck was called Petal Festival. I refuse to call it that. It's a terrible deck name. We're not even playing Petals of Insight anymore. And why name the deck after Market Festival? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. This is a Twiddle Storm deck. Just call it what it is. No need for silly names. So down here we have the Petals of Insight. And this was the win condition way back when. So what would happen is you'd need to get a land that tapped for 7 in play instead of 4. And then you would cast Petals of Insight plus Psychic Puppetry, so that way every time you cast Petals of Insight, it made 1 mana. And then eventually you would do this until you found enough cards that found another Petals of Insight plus your win condition, which was usually Glacial Ray or their Stream of Thought, and then you would either Glacial Ray or Stream of Thought your opponent out after your land tap for 9. So that version of the deck was a lot worse in my opinion, but it was something you could play. I never really played that version during its heyday. I came back and tried it after and was not a fan. I think that the current build is much better than this, and I think even the current build could be improved at some point. So I think the era of Petals of Insight is dead. And then down here, we have our Reach Through Mist. I have not been able to find a 4th Japanese foil for the life of me. I've been trying. I've looked everywhere. So if you're like, well, why don't you look at Card Market or this website? I've tried. I promise you. I've tried. It just doesn't exist right now. I will get one eventually. If you have one, sell it to me. I'd love to buy it. But they just don't exist online right now. Lux. Richard Keane Ferguson. I actually sent these to an event to get signed this year, but then Richard Keane Ferguson didn't show, unfortunately. So that was sort of a bummer. But Flux is primarily there. I think it's really good as a one-of in this deck, but right now I'm not playing it. Because mid-combo, it allows you to discard 8 lands to then turn those lands into action spells. So it's like a really big brainstorm, essentially, which is fairly powerful. It is symmetrical, so if your opponents decide to do it, it helps you win the game, but it also, they could potentially draw into interaction, so that could be an issue. So Flux is what it is. And then down here we have our copies of Negate. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, they are not effective against Spellstutter Sprite. My extra copy of Giga Drowse, Stream of Thought we already covered, Psychic Puppetry we covered, and then this is Eye of Nowhere. Alan Pollock actually lives in a suburb of Syracuse, New York, where I live, and I was able to get this signed pretty easily. It is an arcane spell, so you can attach your Psychic Puppetry onto it to bounce a permanent at sorcery speed. This was actually in my deck list when I top 8'd Grand Prix Columbus back in 2010, a million years ago. Yeah, but I don't know if this will ever be playable in the deck, but it doesn't hurt to have an extra copy of Deep Analysis. And then down here, we have our Indestructible lands from Modern Horizons 2. I think that these can be really playable in a metagame where there's a lot of land destruction, so a lot of cleansing wildfires, a lot of pillages, that sort of thing. But right now, that's not the metagame we're in. But also, right now, everyone's gunning for affinity, so Dust to Dust and Revoke Existence are very popular, and you'd feel very foolish playing an enchantment on one of these only to get it hit by Dust to Dust or Revoke Existence. So these are a little bit of a liability at the moment, and then our additional copies of Moment's Peace and Weather the Storm. I was really fortunate with getting my copies of Moment's Peace when I did, because I sent my Twiddles out for my modern deck to get signed by Rebecca Guay, and I don't know if I would have paid the $50 to get these signed by Rebecca Guay at the time if I wasn't already sending out my Twiddles. So everything just happened to work out very nicely. Rebecca Guay does sign by mail, but it's $50 for 20 cards. It doesn't matter if you send 1 or 20, it's $50. So make sure you get the most out of it when you send to her. Just a heads up. And that is the deck. If you're interested, down here I have the other decks I've uploaded so far. I'm sure you'll find one that suits you. So if you enjoyed this, definitely check out those. And over here is the actual products that I use with all of my decks. So if you want to use the same products as me, I'm not being paid to show these. These are genuinely what I love to use. So definitely check them out. They're great things, I promise. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Keep storming. You're beautiful. See you tomorrow. Hey, Bryant Cook here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, but also follow the social media channels down below. If you want to support this content directly, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/shop. And if you need a little bit of assistance with the Epic Storm to get to that next level, I would recommend going to theepicstorm.com/tutoring. Don't worry, there's more great content coming right up.